What is going on, guys? Lux here from the MD Journey, where my job is to help you succeed on your medical journey with less stress. This video, we're going to talk about a question I keep getting from all you new med students out there, which is, I just started and I already feel like I'm underwater, I'm overwhelmed. So how do you get over that? I'm going to give you my best tips, but we're going to do that after this intro. Alright guys, I totally get it. You just started med school, you were super excited, but at the end of week one, you probably hit a wall where you're just overwhelmed by the amount of material you're learning. You're not sure how to decipher what's important. You're probably having your first test come, around the corner, and things just look crazy. You don't know how you're going to be able to manage to do this for another 3 years. Don't worry, I'm going to give you my best tips on kind of how to overcome that. So first, my first tip, and it's probably the first thing I need all of you guys to do while watching this video, is take a deep breath. Like I said, every single person, including myself, has been in your shoes, and we all go through this phase where we're overwhelmed and we feel like we're drowning, and I get it. But you need to make sure that you kind of take a step back when you're overwhelmed and you say, okay, someone, has been in my shoes. Many people have been in my shoes and they were able to get through it. I can too. They are no better than I am. I'm no better than, you are at this point. I was able to do it when I was overwhelmed and feel like I'm drowning, and you can too. So make sure you take a deep breath and understand that everyone gets through it. Then use the rest of the tips in this video to kind of understand how to overcome that feeling of, doom at the end of your first couple of weeks of med school. So make sure you take a deep breath. You guys are going to do great. You convince people that you're going to be amazing future physicians. And this is just part of the journey where the first learning curve is pretty steep, and that's what you're feeling right now, and it's okay. So take a deep breath. You're going to do fine. Tip number 2, be okay with not learning everything. Even as a 4th year med student, there are things that I have learned that if you guys are in biochem or taking anatomy, I learned when I was in your shoes, and I have no remembrance that I even learned that piece of material. You're gonna forget information. You're never gonna learn information until much, much later into your medical school career, and that is what medicine is. It is a career of lifelong learning, which means you will have the opportunity to learn the information, if not now, later. So be okay with not learning everything at once. So this is how I would recommend you structure your learning. When you're learning a new lecture, when you're getting ready for lecture the next day, ask yourself these questions. What am I supposed to get out of this lecture? Hopefully you're able to decipher that. If your lecture is about a biochemical pathway, you're taking your biochemistry course right now because you're new to med school, ask yourself, what is the goal of this pathway? This chain of chemical reactions, what is supposed to happen? What's the ideal kind of product, input, output? Why is this needed in my body? Answer that question, be able to explain it. If you do, great, you understand one important part of that lecture. There are many more details you need to fill in, but you kind of understand the gist. Often we kind of look at all the information at once and we become overwhelmed because we try to understand the big ideas and the details at the same time. But start with the big ideas. Start with the idea of first getting a grasp of what the lecturer is trying to teach you. If you're an anatomy course, you're learning about the heart, learn about what the specific chapter is trying to teach you. If you're learning about the different valves, learn where they're placed, learn what they do. When you're, if you're learning about hypertension, learn about why people become hypertensive, and then move on to your treatment. So understand the big ideas first before you start getting into the very minute details that you're likely to forget, especially if you don't know what's high yield and what's low yield. But understanding the big ideas of a lecture, understanding why it's important, is going to be high yield regardless. So start there and then move down the totem pole of details. Start adding things. So that's going to be my recommendation, is first be okay with not learning everything and start by learning the big ideas, because then you can have a flow on what you learn next. You understand what the lecturer is trying to teach you, then move on to understanding what can go wrong. For example, going back to our biochemical example, what can go wrong in this pathway? I know why it's important in the body. Now what can go wrong? And then keep going down the ladder of details. Well, now I know what can go wrong. Here's a disease, for example, that is prominent, that people have, and this is where in the pathway it happens, and this is how that person would present. You start creating these chains of understanding in medical school versus just trying to understand every single thing about that lecture at once. So start with the big ideas and then move yourself down, and be okay with not learning everything. Over time, as you review for that lecture or you review for the test, you're going to start filling in the gaps. So be okay with not learning everything on your first time. It's going to make studying much more easier. The last thing I'm going to give you is you need to focus on success in learning and not focus on what is left. So remember how I told you medicine is a lifelong career of learning. Instead of focusing on everything you don't know, which is when the test approaches, it's going to seem like everything in your syllabus. Instead, focus on what you do. When you're learning a lecture, for example, if you're learning about hypertension, you know why hypertension is important, you know who you're likely to find hypertension in, you know what the treatment strategies are for hypertension, but you may not know exactly what receptors you target when you treat hypertension. You may not know what the different medications do. You may not know the side effects. You may not know the complications. It's much easier to focus on the latter when we are medical students, because we think of ourselves as potentially losing points on an exam we have to take. But instead, focus on all those things you just checked off on your list of understanding, and then go back to the things you don't. I always like to say that, just how we make a to-do list of the day and we become overwhelmed when that to-do list is, extraordinarily long. Instead of making a list of items that you have left to learn, make a list of the items you have learned, because then you're both motivated and you feel much better about yourself. You're going to learn the rest of the information eventually. It's just going to take some time. So reward yourself for the success and the hard work you've done on all the pieces of information you've managed to, cram in your brain. As a fourth-year medical student, I don't have to study the same way as I did when I was a first or second, but there are still pieces of information I've carried over. I feel good about myself when, I've been asked a question on my wards or my ICU rotation, and I can go back to something I learned first year and say, I actually learned something. Like, you feel great about yourself when you can retain information like that. And things that I get wrong, it's like you quickly learn and you add it to your list of things that you now know. So make sure you're focused on the amount of information you've learned instead of the amount of information you have left, because all of us, including myself, have a long way to go in medicine. So don't be hard on yourself. Take a deep breath. Make sure you go from big idea to small details, and you're okay with not learning in everything. And finally, reward yourself for all the pieces of information you have gathered to this point. If you do those things, guys, you are going to make your first semester in medical school, your first couple of years in medical school, much less stressful. And hopefully I can help you along the way to make the process even less stressful. So hopefully that was helpful. If it was, comment below with any other questions or what you kind of gained from this video. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel and join the community. And that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If so, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, my friends.